What is up, guys? Welcome to the Transparency. We're gonna do a mock trial, what you would call a mock cross-examination of Detective Michael Van Leuven. This is about to blow up. Again, it is March Madness, so I'm gonna be mad, and I'm gonna bring the madness. Again, Detective Michael Van Leuven. This is the Brian Drake, Daniel Moore case. This is the lead investigator detective from Idaho State Police, and I'm about to cross him up. I have no motherfucking law degree, none whatsoever. But I think that I could cross up Michael Van Leuven. I do. Based on the way that I'd be wording the questions, you're gonna kind of know what he would be testifying to. Also, if you've seen his probable cause affidavit, then you know exactly what he's going to be testifying to, right? All right. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, sit here for the humor. Now, want to show you guys. Let's see my channel. If I go to my channel, let's see, and I do. Okay, here we go. Okay. What is this? Okay.
This way, across here, he says he says it's the insurance company, and then he says it's the old pediatrician's office, the A-frame, which is that building right there. Then a minute later, you see your vehicle unlocked, beep, beep, back up, and you drive back here, back to his house. As you're driving this way, the RP has gotten in his car and driven around here, and you can actually see him come up as your vehicle goes past. His headlights hit the side of your car.
Who's the RP?
The person across the street, the reporting party.
Okay.
My point is that based on all of this, you're sunk.
You're sunk.
No point denying this. The question is why you did what you did.
I didn't do it. I mean, you can go ahead and say that that's what I did, but I didn't. I didn't know Brian Drake. I've never.
All righty. So I want to leave that picture up right like that. All right. Perfect. Bella, I'm sure, will be listening in and will be loving the fact that I'm crossing up Van Leuven. So again, what you're going to see right there is Gary Tolson's the balding guy right there, the closest one to us. Right next to him in the blue long sleeve shirt, that's going to be Michael Van Leuven, Detective Michael Van Leuven. And then Dr. Moore's right over there to the right. Okay? All right. Well, so let's start from the beginning here, Mr. Detective Van Leuven. During our investigation, you determined that Brian Drake was shot and killed at 7:26 p.m. by a small caliber bullet that struck him while he was sitting on a stool at his desk, leaning over while on the phone with his wife, with his blind closed. Somebody shot him through the window while talking to his wife. And this was relayed to you via his wife. And so during your investigation, that is what you determined. Isn't that correct? Okay. In fact, in one of your reports here, the time of death in this homicide is most accurately established by examining the date/timestamp on the outgoing phone call made by Dr. Drake to his wife, Jennifer Drake. And that would be, you provided this screenshot, which showed these calls. Correct? Okay. And if we start from the beginning, in which we're going to, you were in charge of this investigation, the Brian Drake homicide, isn't that correct? And you were assigned to this homicide and led it at the very beginning, pretty much early on in this investigation, isn't that correct? Roughly about midnight on March 12th, going into March 13th, you guys were contacted, the ISP was contacted, isn't that correct? And as you being the lead, that would mean that you would then assign duties to other detectives that worked under you. Isn't that correct? And those detectives performed interviews in this investigation at your, command. Isn't that correct? And then you would then follow up with them to get that information. And how would you go about that? You said that you performed 200 interviews during this investigation. So did you then read all the 200 reports? Did you actually listen to those interviews? How would then you have a debriefing with your detectives? Okay, so before you took over, Bonners Ferry Police Department and the Boundary County Sheriff's Department, they were involved and they had some body cam footage, correct? Some reports. And did they do any recorded interviews? Okay, and so then you then reviewed this material. Okay. So based on the Bonners Ferry and Boundary County body cams, would you say that it is accurate at 7:54 p.m. Brian Drake was found by responding officers at 7:54 p.m.? Okay. And would you say that Marty Ryan, during this investigation, you found out that Marty Ryan had called Jennifer Drake, the wife of Brian Drake, and told her that her husband was dead and to not bother driving down because the area was not safe? And that was at 9:06 p.m. Okay. And now, during your investigation and then up until the arrest of Dr. Moore, at some point you would be required to turn over discovery to the defense. Isn't that correct? And you did a big discovery dump on September 24th, 2020. Okay. Perfect. Now, when you were interviewing Jennifer Drake back in the beginning, you would in fact not meet with Jennifer Drake until March 16th, 2020. Isn't that correct? So the murder was on the 12th. So 13th, 14th, and 15th, you never talked to Jennifer Drake, right? Okay. So in Jennifer Drake's interview, she says that she had two detectives come out to visit her around 1 a.m. the evening into the early morning hours of March 13th. Who were those two detectives? There's no reports anywhere on this ever occurring. So do you know anything about this? Now, early on in the investigation, would you come across a report that was written up by a Detective Ken Lalith out of Kootenai County? Okay. And did you instruct Ken Lalith on March 13th at between noon and 1 o'clock? Did you instruct him to go to Jennifer Drake's house on March 13th, just after noon, to interview Jennifer Drake? That would be her first interview with anybody law enforcement wise that is actually on the record. And was that your call? Who decided that would be happening? Okay. Did you read the report from Ken Lalith? Okay, Your Honor, may I approach? Do you recognize Defense Exhibit A? Okay, and can you identify that for the jury? That would be the report that Ken Lalith wrote up, a supplemental report. Yep. Okay, and you had seen that before? And now can you read the last sentence there? It says that you can refer to my body cam and the dash cam, and that I have no more further involvement in this investigation. Okay. And so again, we're going to go back to that discovery dump that you gave the defense on September 24th, 2020. Did you include Ken Lallis' body cam in that discovery dump with this report? No, you didn't, did you? Okay. Now, Mr. Van Leuven, Detective Van Leuven, did you happen to know Jennifer Drake prior to the murder of her husband? So there would be no reason for Jennifer Drake to have your personal cell phone number prior to the murders or her husband's murder in her phone. Isn't that correct? Okay. Now, upon receiving Ken Lallis' report and the body cam, did you at any point in time call Detective Ken Lallis from Cooney County to talk with him about anything that would have come out of that interview? Because wouldn't it behoove you as the lead investigator, before you're going to go talk to Jennifer Drake on March 16th, that you would want to use any and every interview, anything out there to go and look at before you would go and talk to the wife, right? The widow of Brian Drake. So did you look at that? Did you talk to Ken? Did you get any of his notes? Did you take any notes? Did you provide those notes in discovery? No. Okay, so you as lead investigator detective, when you first sat down with Jennifer Drake, that would be March 16th. Again, so the 13th, 14th, and 15th, we're going to talk about those dates right now before we get into that March 16th timeframe. So we just established that on March 13th, we had two detectives that Jennifer Drake says met her at her house at 1 a.m. We have no idea where these reports are. There's nothing that memorializes that, correct? And then we have the Ken Lallis, that's on March 12th. Now, or I'm sorry, on March 13th around noon, 1 o'clock. Additional stuff that was happening on March 13th was you had ISP detectives Alderson and Lehman go and interview eyewitnesses Aaliyah Sandlin and Isaac Funderburg. Isn't that correct? And did you listen to those interviews and what Aaliyah Sandlin had to say in her interview with the Idaho State Police detectives on March 13, 2020? And you did, okay. And now there was a suspect in this case prior to the arrest of Dan Moore. Isn't that correct? And there was actually like 6 persons of interest prior to Dr. Moore. Isn't that correct? Okay. And one of them was a 16-year-old. Isn't that correct? Okay. And, but that first person that was the suspect that you guys had, that would be Steve Hartman. Isn't that correct? Okay. And Steve Hartman was a younger guy, late 20s, early 30s, right? He was staying at the Kootenai River Inn Casino and working in town. Isn't that correct? And that he would go for nightly walks around the same time every night. And he was seen on cameras. And that's what kind of led the Bonners Ferry and Boundary County task force to detain this man, get search warrants. But there was also the identification of Aaliyah Sandlin from a picture that she was taken to on March 13th, 2020. Isn't that correct? So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to show you some clips here. But before I show you these clips for the jury, you said that you took and were able to get 18 local businesses and all of their camera footage from 18 local businesses, right? And now for the jury's sake, what we're going to do is I'm going to put up a map and we're going to show Bonners Ferry and we're going to identify all the 18 businesses that you obtained these cameras from. And we're going to say what the business is, and they're right along the strip of 95 Main Street. And then we're also going to additionally talk about, and you're going to identify where Drake's building is, where the coffee shop is, where Dr. Moore's building is, where Mick Millet's house is, where Isaac Funderburg's house is, and then where the Super One is. And then last but not least, we're really going to circle the Liberty camera, the Liberty gas station, because that's a really significant focal point of your Excel spreadsheet. Isn't that correct? So to save time, this would have been displayed and he would have been identifying these points. So let's go ahead and start then with clip number 1. So clip number 1 I have here is, well, first of all, who is on that clip? That's Stephen Hartman leaving the Kootenai River Hotel. Okay. And you obtained that from the hotel, correct? Yep. And what time is he leaving the hotel? 6:41 p.m. Okay. And can you identify what he's wearing there? Headphones on, hoodie, hoods up, black. Okay. And then this second clip here, what is that a clip of before we press play? Do you identify that? Can you? He says yes. He's going to say yes. That's the Liberty Camera gas station. Okay. And let's talk about the timestamp of the Liberty Camera gas station. You guys determined that was off an hour. Isn't that correct? Yes. Okay. And you determined that based on looking at other cameras and then talking with the owner, talking with the person that runs the security system. And you guys determined that there was an issue with daylight savings. Isn't that correct? Okay. Now, looking at clip 2, it's a Liberty gas station camera, and it says it's March 12th, 2020. Is that correct? Yep. And the timestamp says 19:21 hours. But that's actually not 7:21. That's actually going to be 6:21. Isn't that correct? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to let this go ahead and play. And now, do you see across the street, do you notice the dog walkers? Yes, I do. Okay. And how many people are walking the dogs? There are 2. And how many dogs are being walked? There are 3. 2 with the one person and 1 with the other person, correct? Yes. Now, during your investigation, you interviewed a Dawn Timmons. Isn't that correct? At some point. And do you recall how many times you interviewed her? Was it just the one time? Okay. And Dawn shared with you that she and T were walking their dogs that night like they always do. Okay. And she told your investigators or your detectives that she had heard a gunshot. Isn't that correct? Okay. Did you ever show Dawn Timmons this clip to have her identify if and in fact this was Dawn Timmons and T and their 3 dogs? No, why would I do that? You didn't, correct? Because as this clip shows, you see Dawn Timmons, her dogs, T with the other 2 dogs. They're heading, what direction are they heading there at 6:21, Mr. Detective Van Leuven? They're heading north, aren't they? And then when they met with the detectives and went over their path of travel, they laid out the path and they said that they went from Lincoln to this street, to this street, to this street, right? And that they would have then been heading south on Main Street to come back. Isn't that correct? And so they got to the very end of their interview where they said that, because they were asked, like, this is your path that you always take. And she's like, well, 1 or 2 nights a week, we'll go our downtown route, which is them heading on Main Street 95 and heading north. And then they get to downtown where basically the Kootenai River Inn is. And then they turn around and they come back. And that would actually be consistent. That's what you see them on that video right there, walking and heading north, would be actually consistent with their downtown route. So when you would have reviewed this footage and seen, and to corroborate Dawn Timmons' statements to you, you would have noticed that she is walking the wrong way when she is saying what she was doing that night with her dogs. Until she gets to the end of the interview when she says, well, we do 1 to 2 nights a week. We do our downtown route, which means we'll just come right out from Lincoln, make a right, and go and just be on 95 heading north into then where the downtown area is. But you never showed Dawn Timmons that clip, did you? Okay, to even verify that it was her. Okay. And then to also pay attention to when she was coming back, to then have her going back then south, to really narrow down that gunshot that she heard, right? But right there you see 2 dog walkers, and it's the 2 dogs with the one person and the 1 dog with the other person, and that's at 6:21 p.m. Well, Google Maps would have it be showed that if you were to travel from that point, walk down to downtown and come back, you are going to be back at Dawn Timmons's establishment where she lives, her residence, no later than just a couple minutes after 7. Not at 7:36, not at 7:30. Okay, now we'll continue on. All right, so we're going to fast forward here to another clip I'm going to show you, and it's from the Liberty Camera gas stations. Isn't that correct? Yes. And can you go ahead and look up in the corner, and what does that say? It says 20:01. So because of the time change, though, it's not 8:01, it's 7:01. Isn't that correct? Okay, perfect. Now, do you see the male that is walking on the same side of the sidewalk that we are on, heading south, which is away from downtown, away from the Kootenai River Inn? And do you see that male walking there? And do you identify that male as Steve Hartman, the male coming from the Kootenai River Inn on his walk, heading south? Yes, that's him. Okay. Now, I asked you earlier what you did on March 13th, 14th, and 15th before talking to Jennifer Drake. Okay. And I asked you, did you listen to Aaliyah Sandlin's interview? And again, who is Leah Sandlin? She is one of the eyewitnesses living across the street from where Drake was killed at his office with her boyfriend or fiance, Isaac Funderburg. Okay, so, and you sent those 2 detectives over there to interview her. Now, I'm going to play a clip of her interview. And do you recall listening to this interview? Play the clip. Now, here towards the end of the interview, when your detective asks Aaliyah if she or Isaac had seen anyone else besides the suspicious person running in between Drake's building and towards that insurance building, and Aaliyah Sandlin says, well, yes, we talked to this guy. And Aaliyah Sandlin said that she saw a male walking on the same side of the road as her apartment. Isn't that correct? In that recording? Yes. And that he had his headphones on. Isn't that correct? And that he was wearing all black. Isn't that correct? And that Isaac asked him, hey, did you hear the shots, the gunshots? Isn't that correct? And Aaliyah said that she did not think that this gentleman, this guy, had anything to do with it, right? That's what she's saying. And then your detectives say, well, why? Why do you think that he wouldn't have anything to do with it? Well, because this person, when he was walking up, it was like 30 minutes after the gunshots. You heard her say that, correct? Okay, so, and that was her reasoning as to why she said that she did believe that this person had anything to do with it, because he was walking up and it was 30 minutes after she heard the gunshot. Isn't that what you heard there? Okay. Now, did you ever follow up after listening to that interview with Leah? Did you ever follow up with Leah with that interview? No. So you never talked to her, correct? No. So Aaliyah's saying, she's saying that guy was present there 30 minutes after the gunshot that she heard. And that's why she believed that this guy had nothing to do with it, right? Okay. Now I want to have you look at this map again and identify for the jury, again, where is Isaac Funderburg's building? Right here. And where is the Liberty Camera gas station? Right here. Right next to each other on the same side of the street. Literally just around the bend. Like, I mean, there's their apartment. Then the next building that's, a working building is the Liberty Camera. So they're very, very close. Closer than Drake and Moore's buildings, correct? Yes. Okay. So how long do you think it would take you, Detective Van Leuven, to walk from Isaac Funderburg's apartment, where Aaliyah Sandlin lives, to the Liberty gas station to be on their camera? How long do you think that would take? Like a minute? Yeah. Max 2, depending how fat and slow you are. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to show you our next clip here. And this is going to be identified as clip number 3. Can you identify what camera, again, this is taken from? The Liberty camera gas station? Okay, thank you. And can you identify what camera number? Because there's 2. Is it number 5 or is it 7? Okay. And what's the timestamp up there? It says 2034. Isn't that correct? Yes. And so that really means what due to the error? That really means 734. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play this clip. Boom, boom, boom. Do you see the male figure that just walked across? Dressed in all black, he's heading back north to the Kootenai River Inn, right? That's the direction. Okay. Who was walking in that clip, Detective Van Leuven? Isn't that your first suspect, Stephen Hartman? So that's the same figure that you see at 7:01 walking this way. And then you see at 7:34 walking that way. Now, did it ever occur to you when you have been investigating this homicide that Aaliyah Sandelin is placing the gunshot that she heard basically at 7 p.m. based on the encounter that she had with Steve Hartman? Aaliyah Sandelin did not say that Steve Hartman arrived 4 minutes or 6 minutes after the gunshots, which would be making him relevant, right? She said 30 minutes, correct? Okay, so sticking with Aaliyah and Isaac Funderburg's interviews that happened on March 13th, we're going to ask some more questions about that. I'm going to play you another clip. And in this clip, Isaac says that he went to Super One. Isn't that correct? And you said that you obtained 18 business cameras during your investigation. Isn't that correct? Was Super one of them? No. Why not? Did you not want to see what time Isaac said he got to Super One to corroborate his statement? In fact, weren't there other people that said they went to Super One while being interviewed? In fact, didn't Drake's last patient, Eldora Gatchel, say that she went to Super One after leaving Drake's office? And numerous other people that actually saw Dr. Drake as a patient went to Super One that day? So that would be another reason to obtain that camera footage. So you obtained 18 businesses, their cameras. And Super One is not one of them. Does Super One not have cameras? Oh, they have cameras. Now, going back to Isaac Funderburg's statements, he said that he got in his car to drive back over to the insurance building to try and take a picture of the guy. Isn't that correct? And in order to do that, you would need a phone, Detective Van Leuven. Isn't that correct? Okay. And he said that he drove his little silver hatchback Volkswagen. Isn't that correct? Okay. Now I'm going to show you guys what is being labeled Defense Exhibit B and C. Here you go. Can you identify that for me? You recognize that? What is that? That is a picture that we took on March 13th of Aaliyah Sandelin's car. And then what's picture C there? That is a picture that we took of Isaac Funderburg's car. And where were those two vehicles parked at? At their apartment across from Dr. Drake's business. Okay. So across from the murder scene, right? Yes. Okay. Now, did you zoom in and take any pictures of the tires? No. Okay. Now, Detective Lehman, in her interview with Isaac Funderburg, said that she wanted to know what car he was driving and when he was driving it due to the tire tracks in the back alley of Drake's. Isn't that correct? So she didn't take a picture of his tires even after that, asking that question? Okay, so Isaac says he went over to look for him and try and get a picture of the guy, but he couldn't find him. Isn't that correct? And then he says that he calls 911 while he is driving in his car in the back alley, and then he crosses through the crime scene, through the drive-through area, back over to his apartment, and gets out of the car with the dogs, and he says that his fiance sent him to go get something from the store because she was cooking dinner, burgers, and needed something for it. Correct? Okay. And your officer asked in that interview if Isaac or her, meaning Aaliyah Sandlin, made any calls during any of this time to establish some type of, timeline. Did you guys call anybody? Did you guys text anybody? And Isaac mentions that he didn't have his phone with him. Right? He didn't have his phone with him when he went to the store. But quickly, his fiance corrected him. Aaliyah corrected him and says, "No, you took my phone and I called you on my phone." Did you recall listening to that? Okay. "And I talked to you while you were at the store." Do you recall that? Okay. Now, did your investigators ask to see their phones? Did they ask if they could dump their phones, like, Cellbrite? Did they do a voluntary search? Were they willing to sign off to look at the phones, to examine the phones? Did you or your detectives ask them to send screenshots of phone calls or anything like that? They would have made text messages, anything? No. Okay. Did you find it odd that Isaac didn't have his cell phone and had to change cars to go to Super One? Or claims that anyways? And did you also find it odd that how could Isaac take a picture of this male if he did not have his cell phone? Did you ever follow up with Isaac or Aaliyah about how Aaliyah possibly called Isaiah Thunderberg when he was at the store if Aaliyah gave him her phone? What phone would possibly Aaliyah Sandlin use to call her phone when Isaac was at the store? They switched cell phones? We don't give our cell phones to anybody. Now, staying with Isaac Thunderberg's statements, do you recall him telling your investigators that there was this black Impala-like vehicle and that it was suspicious? Yes. And that it was at the State Farm Insurance building. And that it caught his eye because the lights came on that car and hit him when he was sitting in his car. Do you remember that? And he remembers this because he was ready to pull out and he noticed the lights come on and that's what caught his attention again. And he mentions that it was shortly after the police went by heading south and that this black Impala waited. And then when the police went by, it then came out, the black Impala came out and then went the opposite way on Main Street and headed north. Do you recall these statements? Did you ever attempt, Detective Van Leuven, while you're going through all of these surveillance cameras to put together 44 clips, did you ever attempt to use the Liberty camera to identify any of this movement by this vehicle? No. Okay. Well, I want you to take a look at clip number 4. Can you identify this camera? Yep, it's a Liberty camera. Yep, it's camera 5. Okay. And what is the time stamp there? 54. Yeah, 6:54. Okay. Let's look at what happens here. That black car catches air almost flying over back behind Drake's back lot entrance. Isn't that correct? And then that black car goes around and then into the insurance building and stops her for a little bit. Isn't that correct? And then what does that black car do? comes straight out of the insurance building and goes, like Isaac says, north. And what was that timestamp again? Just before 7 o'clock? Okay. And now during your investigation, Detective Van Leuven, you would receive tips. Okay. You would receive tips. Isn't that correct? Yes. Do you ever remember receiving a tip and a phone call from a Tim Hand? Well, let's refresh your memory. Here's the report. Tim Hand, baby. Your Honor, I'd like to approach with Defense Exhibit D. Can you identify this document? This is a supplemental report, isn't it? That has to do with Tim Hand, isn't it? Yes. April 1st. Yes. 2020. Yes. And can you read what the supplemental report says? Yep. That I was driving from the Kootenai River Inn. I'm from Canada, and I was in town, and I was in my yellow truck, and I was driving, heading south, leaving the Kootenai River Inn to go to Super One for ice cream. And it was at 6:55 that this silver Passat with no lights on flew out in front of me and went across into where that crime scene was. It didn't have his lights on. I had to slam on my brakes. That's how I remember it. And then I saw, and I just remember looking at my phone or my clock, and it said that it was 6:55. I'm sorry, that it was 7:03, which I run my clock always fast because so it would probably been around 6:55, but my clock said 7:03. Okay. So you received that tip, and then your investigators called Tim Hand, isn't that correct? And so Tim Hand then also says that he went to Super One. Isn't that correct? To go get ice cream. So that would be another reason why you'd want to go and obtain the Super One cameras. But did you? No. Okay. Now, you went through all of these cameras. Did you go and identify this yellow truck? This yellow truck being seen, crossing Liberty cameras. Did you attempt to locate this to corroborate his statements or to toss them out? No. Now, wouldn't Tim Hand's statements be consistent with Aaliyah Sandlin saying that Stephen Hartman was 30 minutes after the gunshot? Because Tim Hand's saying that Isaac Funderburg is going across the way at between 6:55 and 7:03. Now, let's go back and talk about Stephen Hartman's interview. Because you listened to that interview, right? Now, I'm going to play a clip from that interview and ask you if you recall this information. Or we can just look at the FBI report of the interview. Does Stephen Hartman identify Isaac Funderburg to a T? His German Shepherd dogs, his vehicle. Yep. And he says in his interview, he says that Isaac, well, he didn't say his name, but he says that this guy was carrying things into the apartment. Doesn't he? And this is the same guy that would be seen on cameras at 7:34. So this has to happen just a couple minutes before 7:34 at 7:32, right? And wouldn't that be consistent with carrying, could that be consistent with carrying groceries or some type of grocery into the apartment? And wouldn't that then be consistent with Isaac Funderburg already going to the store and him coming back at 7:32? Is it all possible that Isaac Funderburg, on his way back, decided to take that loop back over around before then he came into his apartment? But you didn't go and get the Super One cameras, did you? And just so I'm clear, your affidavit for the arrest of Daniel Lee Moore, you state that you established the time of the shooting based off of Jennifer Drake's 911 call and her statements to you as to what occurred during that 7:17 p.m. phone call that ended at 7:26. And you're also establishing the time of death based on Dr. Drake making that 7:17 phone call due to her needing to hang up and call 911. Isn't that correct? Okay, well, we're going to talk about that. Now, about all that, did you look at Jennifer Drake's outgoing call log when you interviewed her on March 16th, 2020? Did you see a 911 call on her cell phone? No. Okay. And did you get permission to basically extract the data from her cell phone when you met with her on March 16th? Yes. Okay. And when you finally were able to then look at the extraction of that data, did it turn up a 911 call from that cell phone? No. Detective Van Leuven, did you find that suspicious? That a woman says that she called 911 from her cell phone and it's not anywhere to be found in her phone or then with the extraction? Now, how did you determine that Jennifer Drake was in Hayden, Idaho at her home during the time of the shooting? Her cell phone? Now, didn't Jennifer Drake tell you that she had Life 360 application? And you obtained a search warrant, isn't that correct, for Life 360 application? And isn't it correct that you only went for the data concerning Brian Drake, not Jennifer or anybody else that was on that family plan? Now, did you follow up with Kootenai County Dispatch to see what time and what number called 911 to be, as you would say, patched on through a couple different times? You did, didn't you? And it came back to you that saying that there was no 911 records of a Jennifer Drake calling 911. Isn't that correct? That they didn't have any CAD notes. They didn't have any information surrounding a 911 call. Isn't that correct? Did this seem suspicious to you? That their records do not have Jennifer Drake calling 911 to that dispatch location. Was there any record of them receiving a 911 call from Jennifer Drake, CAD notes anywhere else? Yes, Bonner County and Boundary County. Oh, okay, good. Now, so just like you said there is only a paper trail of Jennifer Drake making any calls within regards to Bonner County and Boundary County. Isn't that right? Okay. And during your interview of Jennifer Drake, she told you that Boundary County or Bonner's Ferry Police Department, one of those two, they called her at 7:44 p.m. Isn't that correct? Yes. Yes, they wanted Brian's cell phone numbers. Isn't that correct? And she didn't understand why. Did you ever follow up with this? Did you ever ask anybody from Boundary County or Bonner's Ferry who, in fact, made that 7:44 p.m. phone call to Jennifer Drake? No. Now, did you view Jennifer Drake's phone records? And did you see, when you were viewing them, did you see this, this 7:32 p.m. call? Now, this would be the version that you see on Brian Drake's phone, correct? And that would be a missed call, right? Okay. Now, and that was from Jennifer Drake's cell phone, right? Now, you have the 911 call from Jennifer Drake that she made, and there's a recording of it. And we don't know when it starts, though, but we at least have Bonner County, and they said they got that around like 7:30-ish, 31-ish, something like that. Now, how many minutes in total was Jennifer Drake's 911 call? If you want me to refresh your recollection, I can show you the CAD notes if you would like to see those. Here you go. 4 minutes and 36 seconds. Okay, perfect. Now, I have a question for you, Detective Van Leuven. Maybe you can help me understand this. Did you ever wonder how Jennifer Drake called Brian Drake at 7:32 p.m. from her cell phone when, and in fact, she was on the phone at 7:32 p.m. with 911? How could she call Brian Drake's cell phone while she was on her 911 call with police? Isn't it possible that Jennifer Drake, since there are no records of her calling 911 from her cell phone, that in fact Jennifer Drake called 911 from a completely different number, from a completely different phone, a physical phone, and that somebody else could have had Jennifer Drake's cell phone besides herself? How about this? I can't wait to say objection, speculation. Don't you speculate the whole thing that when you're investigating? As an investigator, would you not think to yourself, how could Jennifer Drake make a 7:32 p.m. phone call to her husband's cell phone from her cell phone if she is in fact using her cell phone to be on the phone with police? And there's her 911 call. There it is. It's for X amount of minutes long, which would go way past 7:32. Would that lead an investigator to believe in this investigation that maybe Jennifer Drake has multiple phones? Now, let me ask you a question. Did you ever ask Jennifer Drake about her March 12th, 12:43 p.m. Brian Drake calls her, and it was an outgoing call that lasted for 3 seconds? So he actually made contact with Jennifer Drake at 12:43 p.m., correct? Correct. For 3 seconds. Did you ever ask Jennifer Drake what that phone call was about that lasted for 3 seconds? Did you ever interview Brian Drake and Jennifer Drake's son named Brenner Drake? No. So then you would not, well, you had Brian Drake's phone records though, right? Did you not notice that at 12:43, just boom, boom, a couple seconds later, that Brian Drake went and then called Brenner Drake's cell phone number and then had a phone call for 7 minutes and I think it was 15 seconds. Are you aware of that? So is it possible, since you didn't ask her, is it possible that Brian Drake, well, let me back up. You examined Brian Drake's cell phone records, probably for what, a long time back, right? How many times did Brian Drake call his son's cell phone? How about that? How about this? I'm going to hand you months worth. Here you go. Here's all these months worth of records. Can you please point me out how many times Brian Drake called and talked to his son from his cell phone to his son's cell phone? We're going to be here all day when you can be searching that shit because they ain't going to find motherfucking shit. Okay. Did you find anything yet? Okay. So is it possible that Brenner said, I have mom's phone. She has mine. Call her on that. Call mom on my phone. Click hang up. Is it possible? Did you ask Jennifer Drake where she was at all that day? No. Did you ever ask her what she was doing that day? No. Did you ever go through her text messages to find out what maybe she was doing that day? So you have no idea who she had lunch with that day? March 12th? What a fucking detective. Now, in your investigation, you would have come across a guy by the name of Dwayne Fish. Isn't that correct? Yes. Do you recall that? Out of your 200 interviews, April 1st, 2020. Now, do you recall in that interview that Dwayne Fish said that, now who is Dwayne Fish? He was going to be employing Brenner Drake that summer, correct? And he had already started working for him, right? And they go to the same church as Jennifer Drake and Brian Drake, correct? Yep. And Brian Drake performs chiropractic work on them, him and his wife. Yeah, from time to time. Yep. Okay. So when you sent your little detective crew out there to interview Dwayne Fish said that Brenner Drake had called him at 6:50 p.m. the night of the murder and said that my dad was shot in the leg and I wouldn't be at work tomorrow. Now, did your investigators just like go, what? Drop their chin? Did they come back to you running like, oh my God, you got to hear this. This guy says that Brenner Drake called him at 6:50 saying his dad was shot in the leg and that he wouldn't be at work tomorrow. 6:50. Does that not like have bells going off in your head? Like, well, the shooting wasn't allegedly until 7:26. But now let me go back to being professional. So you were aware, you said that you 200 interviews, you went through them all, right? Now, did you ask Dwayne Fish for his phone records to see if, in fact, Brenner Drake really called at 6:50? No. Did you have any suspects on April 1st? So you didn't ask Dwayne Fish if he could supply his phone records to see if, in fact, Brenner Drake called him at 6:50, or if he's maybe mistaken and it was later than that, Did you? So you were notified, at least at this point, that Brenner Drake had a cell phone? Did you attempt to get Brenner Drake's cell phone? You also know that Brian Drake called his son that day, like I said, at the 12:43, just a couple seconds after this phone call right here that he has with Jennifer's phone, but then he calls his son's phone right after. Did you attempt to get those phone records? No. Well, you had a person of interest that was a 16-year-old during the course of your investigation. Isn't that correct? How old was Brenner Drake at the time? 16. So if you thought a 16-year-old could do this crime because of a possible infidelity issue, right? Why wouldn't you think that a different 16-year-old could do this crime due to possible abuse issues? Because you would hear during your interviews of the family, to include Jennifer Drake, that Brenner Drake was abused by his dad. Isn't that correct? Now, furthering on this, Brenner Drake and Jennifer Drake had a phone call at 6:56 p.m. the night of the murder. Isn't that correct? So it is very plausible and possible that where Brenner Drake got the information that his dad was shot in the leg could have come from that 6:56 p.m. phone call made between Jennifer Drake and Brenner Drake. Isn't that correct? Who else did Brenner Drake talk to prior to calling Dwayne Fish, or possibly text with prior to calling Dwayne Fish, that he would have this information? In fact, in your investigation, isn't it true that Jennifer Drake never told? She claimed that she never told her kids that Brian was shot. That she just said that he had an issue because he had that leg issue, right? But she tells you, Jennifer Drake told you during the investigation, that she never told her kids that Brian was shot. So how does Brenner Drake even know that Brian is shot, and he is relaying that to Dwayne Fish? Did any of this seem suspicious to you in your investigation, and you're such a fucking qualified motherfucker? None of this stuck out to you like, maybe we should get these fucking phone records? The fuck are you doing? Now back to being professional. Now, let's move back to your investigation with Brian Drake's patients that day. Did you make a list of all of Brian Drake's patients that day and go through it and interview all of them? Yes. Okay. And you noticed during your investigation that Brian Drake sees his patients he has 15-minute slots to see his patients. Isn't that correct? Yes. And the only time that he has larger gaps is if he has a new patient. Isn't that correct? And how does Brian Drake designate or mark it on his forms about new patients? He uses the N and P and puts it next to the person's name. Perfect. Okay. And then does he normally give them an extra time slot? Yes. Okay, perfect. So when you make this list, you would have found out that the last patients Dr. Drake saw that day were Eldora Gatchell. That's what's on the list, right? Eldora Gatchell. In his list, in the schedule, does he put Caleb Kakoa Nazara? No, he does not. One second. Back. Okay, so anywhere on that list, did you see the name Caleb Kakoa Nazara? No. Okay. You or your detectives, it just seems like you weren't in any of the big interviews, were you there, Detective Van Leuven? You just sent all these people out to do all these interviews, but you weren't in any of them, were you? What interviews were you in? Just the one with Jennifer Drake? Okay, just to make sure that softball questions were thrown up? Okay, that's making way more sense now. Bless this, man. Okay, so when your investigators met with Eldora Gatchell, she said that she was arriving at her appointment at 6:03. Her appointment was actually at 6. So somebody that was trying to squeeze her in, she's just showing up late. And did you look at any of the cameras to identify Eldora's vehicle? And in fact, you didn't ask and receive Eldora's description of her car. And that would be a Pilot. Is that correct? Yep. She emailed you those pictures of her car, didn't she? When did she email those to you? June 9th. Does that ring a bell? 2020? June 9th, 2020. So you had no idea what the fuck Eldora Gatchell's vehicle looked like until June 9th, 2020. Isn't that correct? And when was the murder again? March 12th, 2020? March, April, May, 4 months. Suckers. Okay. So you couldn't have possibly, and you never showed Eldora any videos, right? Okay, no. But you could have possibly looked at the videos to know and find her vehicle because you didn't know her vehicle, right? Okay. You need to be refreshed. I can give you those emails if you need to see Eldora reaching out to Leslie Lehan or Liam or whatever the fuck her last name is. All right, so and now in her interview, she said that she had the last spot and she recorded a video of her brother playing the ukulele and provided that to your detectives on March 16th, 2020. And she said there was a truck there. It looked like a two-toned. It was like a work truck. And when she had gotten in there was somebody else in there. You guys come to find out that it's this Paul Jacobson guy. And that when she had then left, she said there was a truck that was in like the drive-through area. And she thought it was the same truck that it was when she had gone in there. And so that they had to leave a different way. And now we just discussed this, but how long were Brian's appointments? 15 minutes, right? Okay, perfect. So now Eldora, you then met up with Paul Jacobson. He then shot through some screenshots. Actually, you didn't meet up with him. I forget. You didn't meet up with anybody. But these other two detectives, they met up with Paul Jacobson. He showed them screenshots that he was making phone calls and he was done and well on his way by like 6:18. So Eldora Gatchell gets into this meeting and she says that the blinds were open for her appointment, which she thought was weird, but she, it was just those three in there, so whatever. And she says that she went first, and then in between her and her brother going, that there was a phone call, and that was right here at 6:42, and it was lasted for 13 seconds, and it was Brian saying that he was still with patients and he would call back. And that's kind of how she rough estimated it, that's when they switched. Like then it was Caleb's turn to go and him have his appointment. Isn't that correct? Yes. Okay. So now again, we already established that Brian Drake has 15-minute increments, and sometimes they actually take way less. But if he's going to see a new patient, he blocks off, another spot. So you'd have like 30 minutes, right? But you saw nowhere on that list for his schedule that day, nowhere did it say Caleb Kakoa Nazara, right? No. And now you processed the scene, isn't that correct? The crime scene? Okay. And you would have went through all of Brian Drake's desk material. Okay. And did you notice and put into discovery a new patient intake form from Caleb Kakoa Nazara? No. And in fact, there is not one, is there? No, there's not. Okay. And in fact, there is no NP next to Caleb Kakoa Nazara because his name isn't there. And in fact, it listed that Eldora Gatchell was to pay $250. It was written in ink, And was that in cash or credit card? Did you follow up with the bank to see if Eldora Gatchell's card was run that day? If Eldora Gatchell paid cash, did you add up all the money to see what came in that day and how it came in terms of cash versus credit card to see if, in fact, everybody did pay, especially the last person? Now, Eldora Gatchell says that she left around 7:15, 7:20, and then she went to Super One. Did you go and get those Super One's camera again? Nope. Okay. Were you able to find Eldora Gatchell on the cameras, any of these cameras? Well, I'm going to show you a clip here. Do you know what that's from? That's from the Columbia Bank on Main. And do you see that timestamp there? It says 7:18. Boom, here it comes. Eldora Gatchell's pilot. Did you ever show this to Eldora Gatchell for her to identify that this is, in fact, was or was not her vehicle at 7:18? In some seconds. Now, right behind Eldora, continue to play it. Stop. What is that? That is a truck with running lights across the back. Does that truck meet the description that Eldora Gatchell gave that was the truck that she saw? Is it consistent? Okay. Now, Eldora Gatchell is seen at 7:18 on this camera. What happens right before 7:18? Because in your statements, you believe that this is all happening, and you said right here that, oopsies, the time of death in this homicide is most accurately established by examining the date and timestamp on the outgoing call made by Dr. Brian Drake. Now, here we go. How do you know that Brian Drake made that phone call, Detective Van Leuven? Isn't it true that you only have the words of Jennifer Drake, which would be hearsay as to what transpired on that phone call? Because Brian Drake is not here to corroborate that or be, testified to anything other than that. So this phone call that you're establishing is at 7:18 or 7:17, and you're saying it's because Brian Drake made it. That would have been made literally with Eldora Gatchell still being there. Because the Columbia Bank cameras are down. They're not where Liberty is. They're down a little bit. And so is it possible that Eldora Gatchell or Caleb Kakoa Dazara, in fact, dialed and hit that number? Is that possible? Did you ever try to take DNA fingerprints off of Brian Drake's cell phone? No. No. Why was it not suspicious if Eldora Gatchell had a 6 p.m. appointment that she would not be leaving until 7:17? She got there at 6:03. Why is Eldora Gatchell there for 1 hour and 15 minutes? That is way outside of the scope of how much time Brian Drake spends with his patients. Isn't that correct? Now, when you interviewed Isaac Funderburg, or rather your investigators, Isaac Funderburg gives an exact description of who? Caleb Kakoa Dazara. Okay. Now, Now, how could that be? He says wearing all black with a gray like sweater thing, has a beanie on. He's dark complected. He looks like the guy that works at the Liberty gas station because he's basically saying that he's, not American. Right? Yes. Now, how is it possible that Isaac Funderburg could have possibly seen Caleb Kakoa Nazara if Caleb Kakoa Nazara is in the car with Eldora Gatchel and they are leaving and they are already gone and on their way heading towards Super 1 at 7:18? We see their vehicle. How is that possible? Well, is it possible that Isaac Funderburg, when he went over at 6:55 to 7:03, when he went over, that's in fact when he would have seen them as he's crossing over, then he saw them actually in the back. Him walking up around, that all of that actually happened a hell of a lot earlier. Walking up and back through along the side of the building and back over that way. How would Isaac Funderburg ever be able to give a description of Caleb Kakoa Nazara? When would have been the opportunities to see him? If it, in fact, he did all of this at 7:28, 7:29, 7:30, 7:31, and then back at the house, back at his apartment. Caleb Kakoa Nazara is long gone in Eldora Gatchel's Pilot by 7:18 on Main Street. Maybe they saw each other at fucking Super 1. How about that? He followed them all the way to Super 1. How about that? Oh, snap. Now, Eldora told you, strike that. At any point in time in your investigation, did you come across the fact that Jennifer Drake, Brian Drake, and Eldora Gatchel were ever involved in any businesses together? Did they do business together? I mean, how would I know that? Okay. For example, why is this relevant? Well, you did this investigation. Did you ever come across the information that Eldora Gatchel attempted to try to get Dan Moore in business together and have them donate money or give money to Eldora Gatchel's mother in Hawaii? And that the Moores didn't want anything to do with that? So is it really outside the scope to think that Eldora Gatchel would have asked Brian Drake if he wanted to get involved with any business opportunities to open anything and do anything when Eldora Gatchel made that advance towards the Moores? Now, Eldora Gatchel told you that she went to the airport to pick up her niece on Thursday, right? And that her niece wasn't feeling well and that it was just Caleb and her that went to the appointment. Now, do you find it suspicious or ironic or weird that then Eldora Gatchel tells you that she then went to the airport the following day on Friday and she was in Coeur d'Alene and had to go to the airport, and that's how she did not know anything about Brian Drake until Friday night at 7:30? Also, Eldora Gatchel went to the airport on Thursday and Friday. What was she doing at the airport on Friday? Because in the interview that she would have on the 16th with Eldora Gatchel, Caleb Kakoa, the niece, everybody's present. So what did she go to the airport on Friday for? And who lives by CDA, Coeur d'Alene? Who lives right by there? Jennifer Drake. Now, Van Leuven, you're just so fucking good. Again, now you claim that 7:17 p.m. phone call made by Dr. Drake to his wife best establishes, okay, You say that it best establishes the time of death in this homicide is most accurately established by examining the date and timestamp on the outgoing call made by Dr. Drake. And again, I just asked you if and in fact it's at all possible that Dr. Drake did not make that phone call. Meaning, could he be already dead, Van Leuven? Is it at all possible that Dr. Drake was already dead at that time? For example, wouldn't the best evidence to establish this time of the homicide be to talk and work with the ME? I'm sure you viewed the autopsy report, did you not? Okay. So did you ask the coroner, the ME, Sally Aiken, what time would you establish his time of death at based on her work? Did you review that autopsy? Okay. Did you notice in the autopsy and in Sally Ann Aiken's report that she said that there was vegetation, dirt, soil all over Drake's back sweater part? Did you read that part? Did you ask any of Drake's patients? I know you asked Drake's patients if you could smell alcohol on him. Did you ask any of Drake's patients once you got that information and saw that he had dirt and soil, vegetation, stuff like that on his sweater? Did you ask any of his patients if when he performed any of his chiropractic duties on them that day, did you notice Dr. Drake have any dirt? Was his sweater dirty? Did you ask anybody that? Did you ask them if Dr. Drake had dirt under his fingernails when he was working on them? Did you ask anybody that? Did you notice in the report by your ME here, did you notice that there were no glass shards present on the back of Drake's sweater? Or anywhere for that matter. No glass particle shards, nothing. From your interpretation that came from Jennifer Drake, that Dr. Drake was leaned over at his desk and got shot through the window, and that window got blown out on his back. Okay. But Sally Aiken can't find anything that has any shards of glass. Did you notice in her report that she mentions Dr. Drake's hair? And that the only thing that was present in his hair was his hair and gel, not his hair, gel, and glass shards, glass particles. Did you notice when you processed the crime scene and you took photos of the crime scene, which I will show you right here, exhibits, boom, 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 boom. Let's go ahead and look at those. Where around his body, on that floor, do you see in his office right there where his body is laying all around there, do you see any glass shards, particles that he would have then carried with him and they would have dropped off of him when he would have hit the ground? Any glass around where his body is laying? Do you see any? Did you ask forensics to come in and process the scene and look, did they find anything? Did they scoop up anything? Nope, and no. There was nothing there. Dr. Drake was laying on his back when you arrived. Isn't that correct? Was there dirt, soil, vegetation on the ground in his office? Did you note that? No. In fact, you took no pictures. They didn't. Nobody. You had no markers down. They didn't take any of the forensics. They didn't scoop it up. They didn't. Nothing, right? No, there's nothing there. And now, did you notice that Sally Ann Aiken said that his wound, that bullet wound that you'd speak of, was at a slight upward angle not a downward angle that you allege in your arrest affidavit of Dr. Moore? You didn't think when you saw the autopsy report come back and say that it's at an angle like this, and you're saying that it's at an angle like this, that it would behoove you to speak to homegirl? In fact, you would have had this autopsy report way before you have ever fucking wrote your probable cause affidavit for the arrest of Daniel Moore. So your fucking probable cause and your fucking theory was after you would have had an opportunity to look at her report, her forensics, to see how the bullet traveled and how it entered. But that didn't stop you, did it, Van Leuven? You still wrote down in your affidavit for the arrest of Dan Moore that this bullet, this magical bullet, I found one hole through the double pane window of the exam room. This window looked out to the far north coffee lodge drive-thru. The metal midi blinds in the window were closed, not like Eldora Gatchel said, and had a corresponding hole. The hole through the window and blinds was consistent with being caused by a small caliber bullet being fired by a standing adult shooting from immediately outside the window into the office space. The location of the entry wound, considered with the trajectory of the bullet in Dr. Drake's body, indicated Dr. Drake was likely sitting on a stool located in front of the window and was facing away from the window. We located a single bullet. Now, we're going to get over here to this stool. If Dr. Drake was sitting on the stool, let me just back up. All of your allegations and your theory comes from one person only. And that would be what Jennifer Drake told you of the version of the events, correct? There's no scientific evidence that is like, yeah, my shit is right. Okay, just making sure. Now, how tall is Dr. Drake? You have no fucking clue, do you? How tall was the stool? You have no clue, because guess what? You didn't take the stool in for evidence, didn't you? The stool that Dr. Drake was sitting on and in that office, you did not take into evidence. How high was it off the ground? I don't know. Don't you think that'd be a pretty important piece of evidence? But you didn't take the stool. You didn't think it was important, right? Why not? Now, I have all these pictures here. We're going to show you this picture. Whoop, there's a stool. Look at all the shards on there. How the fuck are they on there if Dr. Drake's ass was on that motherfucker? He would have wiped them on out when he would have went down. Dr. Drake is sitting on the stool. There's shards that hit the stool, but not his back. That is indicative of somebody not sitting in the stool. Isn't that correct? That is consistent with somebody not sitting in that stool. Isn't that correct? That's how there's shards on the stool. That's what's consistent with. God, yeah, man, I think you're right. The Boundary County coroner, Mick Millett, was on scene and took the body. But backing up right here, the trajectory of the bullet in Dr. Drake's body indicated Dr. Drake was likely sitting on a stool located in front of the window and was What in the fuck are you talking about? That is, you want to talk about scientifically impossible? That sentence right there is scientifically impossible with the window. and Dr. Drake's height and the stool, but guess what? You didn't do any of that shit. You couldn't even perform a 3D demonstration. You couldn't do anything because you no longer have that stool. How incompetent. Well, no, you can't have that stool. Who actually has that stool? Jennifer Drake has that stool. Let's talk about that. Now, the autopsy. Dr. Drake's body was later transported to the Spokane County Medical Examiner's office. She performed that autopsy on March 16th. Dr. Aiken attributed the cause of death to a penetrating gunshot wound. Dr. Aiken further found that the bullet had entered the body just below the left scapula and 3 3/8 inches to the left of the midline of the back. The bullet grazed and perforated the left pulmonary artery, causing abundant hemorrhaging in the chest cavity. A small caliber handgun bullet was recovered from Dr. Drake's left pectoral muscle. This bullet has been analyzed by 2 forensic laboratories, and 2 of them did not give the same results. That's what's funny. I have been advised by ISP forensic scientist Jacobson, that the bullet is in good condition and a match is likely if we recover the murder weapon. Where is there any talks about why are you not including in this affidavit for the arrest of Daniel Lee Moore? So my next question here, Van Leuven, is going to stop us here at part 1, which is, I have a question. Why would you not add in your affidavit that you think that this is all supportive of your fucking theory? That is just absolute horseshit. But why are you not mentioning what Van Leuven said, or what Aiken said about the gunshot wound, and that it was at an upward angle? Because that doesn't go with your theory, does it? You just left out the biggest piece of Sally Aiken's assessment. Which was the angle of that penetrating bullet. Which is not indicative of a guy leaning over at a desk. There's no way to shoot an upward angle with a guy leaning over a desk. How do I possibly shoot through a window and shoot him? So that's my part 1 on how I would cross-examine Van Leuven. And we just getting started. And I'm just saying, if I can do this with absolutely no law degree, none. I'm not saying that I'm not as smart as lawyers, but I just don't have a law degree. I have other accolades, but how anybody that is a lawyer could not possibly destroy the fuck out of this. Like, you purposely didn't go and get shit because it messed with your shit. You know what I'm saying? And I've never seen anybody put together an Excel spreadsheet in 2020 and not use anybody's phone records to do it, just using surveillance cameras. And Micah Sturgis was right. He said that the only reason you would ever do this is if the cell phone records do not show the same thing. And he was right. They don't. Unbelievable. Starting from the top. Happy March Madness. There we go. Starting from the top. Enjoy it. But that's what do you guys think about it? You guys are listening to this. You guys are the jury. What do you think when you would hear this? I really need to know what you guys would think as being the jury out there. Man, a quick question. Why is Fenderberg's name different when Ellie? Yeah, because it's like Spain, Ireland, or whatever. Because he changed it. I haven't even gotten to the Bobby Goad shit. I haven't even gotten to, okay, well, Eldora Gatchel said the Bobby Goad visitor. Where's that report? Where are any of these reports? And you guys, they have all this shit. Don't think that they don't. Van Leuven did not turn over the Ken Lalith body cam, but he turned over the report. Well, I think the Moors will be getting that body cam due to El Moi. But I feel like the cops and prosecutors need to do time when charging an obviously innocent man, right? William says that Van Leuven is a putz. Yeah. And then here, this is him. This is who. This is this.
Shot anybody?
You were sick.
Yeah, and diarrhea.
And in listening to our interview before, it's unclear to me whether or not that time period was before or after the call came in when the shooting happened. Because Mick says he thought it was, that he's absolutely certain that you didn't leave until after the call came in.
That's a lie. That's a lie. And I cannot wait to tear your ass up about that. That is an absolute fucking lie to him right there. That is not what Mick Millett said in his interview. Not for one fucking minute. God, these fucking liars, man. This guy's horse shit. Absolutely unfucking believable.
Right.
Is that your recollection?
Yeah.
So you said you got to his house about when?
I mean, it's been so long, I don't even remember.
Okay, he said a little after 6.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
I go there almost every night. So we just have dinner usually, watch some TV, and that's the end of it.
Who'd you go there with?
Just myself.
Just yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, how'd you get there?
Like vehicle.
What vehicle?
I think my truck.
What kind of truck do you have?
A Toyota.
Okay, what color is your Toyota?
White.
All right, so you think you went there in your white Toyota
I believe so.
by yourself. Mm-hmm. And then at some point the call came in. The question is it premeditated murder or is it a premeditated shooting through a window? Because those are two different things.
Van Leuven, I hate to inform you, but Dr. Drake was not shot through any fucking window. Wake up. No window. None. And you know who's going to fucking say that shit on the stand? Fucking Sally Ann Aiken's going to say that shit on the stand. Sally, where's all the fucking glass shards? Sally, why the fuck does Dr. Drake have dirt, vegetation, soil all over his back of his sweater? Well, that would be indicative of being on the ground, wouldn't it? Outside. Well, why don't you look at the crime scene again? I behoove you to go look at the crime scene and go look at the video and go look at the back little shed area. It's right up against the building. That fucking door is so ajar and off. It looks like somebody got thrown and checked up into it. And it's so off to the right. And then I think it's going to be consistent with some pictures that they actually took that have these little shards. They look like splinters. Go look, it's a wooden shed. And it's so disheveled. And it's just like, Brian Drake wasn't shot through no fucking window. The only person that's saying that is Jennifer Drake. And then Van Leuven ran with it because he's shitty at his job. Number one suspect here was Jennifer Drake. She wasn't even a fucking suspect. In fact, she got her fucking $1 million within 3 fucking weeks because of this fat fuck. Yeah, Van Leuven.
This is your opportunity.
Signing off. Jennifer Drake texting Van Leuven to say, hey, my insurance company's going to be calling you. And then what does he do? Jerks it.
To pick which one it is.
Well, I didn't kill him. So
You fired the shell, the round that killed him.
No, he didn't.
Whether you intended to kill him or not is a different question.
Prove it.
I just showed you the gun. Is that gun?
That's not the gun. That's not the gun. It was a revolver that you used. We're currently doing search warrants at both your residences, at your chiropractic office.
And what'd that turn up, honey? How many dives did you do in the fucking river that there's no water in? How many dives did you do? 4? What'd you guys get? Nothing. Nothing. Going after this man for nothing. Pathetic. Pathetic. I just destroyed your case in 1 hour and 30 minutes. A nobody, a bum, a fucking hoodie, backwards hat, hoe. And I still probably have like 3 or 4 more hours of your cross. There's no record of Jennifer Drake calling 911 from her cell phone, and this guy's over here like.
Your gun shop over in Montana, okay? As well as your vehicle, your Toyota is being towed down to Coeur d'Alene. Your other vehicles are going to be searched. In talking with the prosecutor and in showing him what we've got, we all feel confident that presented to a jury would convict you for this.
Then why don't you go forward with the
So
fucking
you gotta ask
crime?
yourself,
Then why didn't you go forward with it? If you had all this stuff, you don't need no fucking confession. Go forward with it. Go do it now. Dan Moore's gonna own all you guys. That's my prediction.
how do I want this to go? Do I want this to be seen as an intentional, premeditated homicide? Or do I want this to be seen as what it was, which was an accident? But only you can answer that question.
I didn't even know Dr. Drake.
I don't know if you did or not. All I know is you shot him. I don't know why. I think I know why, but I don't.
I didn't shoot him, and I didn't do it.
How do we see your truck driving around his office, driving through the alleyway between his office and the coffee shop?
What
That's
time?
the thing, it's a coffee shop.
After the murder, motherfucker. He's
Each
like,
one of
that's the
these
thing, it's a
lines
coffee shop.
represent a camera.
Hey, Van Leuven, I got one more question for you. I can't wait to drop the hammer on your ass. I know you saw those fucking cameras at Coffee House. I know you saw them, and I'm going to prove that you saw them, and you buried them. And I can prove it. And I have a witness. You are lying. The coffee shop had cameras. You buried them. You didn't go and get the super ones because what? They didn't fucking show what you needed to show. You guys are horrible. And then you frame somebody because then you what? You want the widow to go collect her million and then go after property? Go after money because you think that this man has money? You guys are sick as fuck. Fuck all of you. Sick, disgusting. You're a disgrace. What a failure. Look at this guy. Failure. Absolute failure.
This is the business that the cameras came from. These are the channels because each business had multiple cameras. This is the time step on the camera. This is the actual time which we can establish by common things being seen. And this is a description of what we see. We see you getting to Moore's house. We see you spend about an hour and 10 minutes at his house. We then see you leave.
At 7:13. Mm-hmm.
We see you go down Hill Street Alley. Get a map out here, sorry.
Do the right thing, Van Leuven. Do the right thing. Stuff makes me sick. Ruining people's lives.
You come out of his house, you come down Hill Street Alley, you turn here, you come down here, you turn in behind the church, you circle around the church, you then drive up here, you pause it before turning on 95, we think because you're looking back into this parking lot. You're coming back slowly up 95. You turn into here. You come back around again. You go back here again, back around again. You're clearly visible in the cameras. You can clearly see you. You come back in here. You turn then between here. You turn between these two buildings, and you stop right here. And that's at 7:17:52. The murder
7:17:52.
happened exactly at 7:26, and we can prove that through phone records.
Yeah! We can prove that he was murdered at 7:26 through phone records. You a damn fool, motherfucker. You are insanely stupid. None of that is provable through phone records. Absolutely none of that is provable through phone records. That is one woman's fucking version of shit that did not happen that way. The evidence shows that he was not shot through a window.
Because he was on the phone with his wife when he was shot.
You bought it. You bought it, buddy. Yeah. God, how do you buy such shit? What a fool.
17:52. After pausing here, you then get back on Main. You drive back up. You park at your office. You can see that your lights lock your truck. You can then see as you're walking over here, there's two deer. One of the deer looks back at you. The deer move on. You cross here. That's a minute and a half before the shooting. The shooting occurs.
I cannot believe that you are going off of this is when the shooting occurs. Aaliyah Sandelin debunks Jennifer Drake. Steve Hartman debunks Jennifer Drake. This shooting was not at 7:27. God, I love it. Don't fuck with me and
The guy across the street and his girlfriend see you. He yells at you, "Hey!"
No, he doesn't see him. Oh my God, you liar! Oh. He sees a man that looks like the Liberty gas station, little Pablo.
Was that you? You turn, look back at him, walk, and then run this way across here. He says first he says it's the insurance company, and then he says it's the old pediatrician's office. You know, the A-frame, which is that building right there.
And you believe that
Then,
drug selling
a minute
motherfucker?
later, you see your vehicle unlocked, beep, beep, back up, and you drive back here.
Hey, Van Leuven, why was Drake over at Aaliyah Sandelin and Isaac Funderburg's apartment that morning at around, 9:52? Why is Aaliyah Sandelin checking on her baby daddy status that she doesn't believe that Isaac Funderburg is the baby daddy of her baby? Go check it out. It's court records. Aaliyah Sandelin doesn't believe that Isaac Funderburg is the dad of her motherfucking baby. That's right. Not saying that Drake is, but
Back to his house. As you're driving this way, the RP has gotten in his car and driven around here, and you can actually see him come up as your vehicle goes past. His headlights hit at the side of your car.
Who's the RP?
The person across the street, the recording party.
Okay.
My point is that based on all of this,
Dan doesn't know anything. Daniel Lee Moore is like, what? Who's the RP? He doesn't even know what you guys are talking about.
you're sunk.
You're
There's
sunken.
no point denying this. The question is why you did what you did.
I didn't do it.
Wow. Look at him. He scuffs like,
I mean, you can go ahead and say that that's what I did, but I didn't. I didn't know Brian Drake. I've never shot anybody.
oh, you're putting your career on a lying, manipulative woman. Lana, you made me laugh. I was driving when you said backwards, hat, hoe, hoodie. Oh my God, shit. Yeah. Fuck yeah. Love your spirit, Lana. Your excitement. This stuff is ridiculous, man. Like, there's so much shit that I haven't even put out yet because I got to leave some fireworks for July, don't I? You know what the best firework is going to be? I'm going to say what the best fireworks are going to be. Dwayne Fish's and Brenner Drake's phone records. Those are going to be some fireworks. Those are going to be some motherfucking fireworks. And these assholes don't even go and get them. That's just like the Karen Reed case. That is just like Delphi.
Do you understand the importance of intent? Because it looks to me, by the nature of the shooting, that you didn't mean to kill him. I'm not even sure you meant to hit him. I think you just meant to scare him.
How would you? Where do you get this shit from, man? Where are you getting this stuff from? Where are you even making this shit up from? I don't think that you meant to do this. I don't think that you meant to do that. I don't even think that you meant to hit him. I think it's so fabulous, this timeline that you put up. Your own timeline is going to prove Dan Moore is innocent. Your own timeline that shows that Dan Moore was nowhere around when the actual crime was occurring. This 713, 714, 715, 717, 718, Dr. Drake is already motherfucking dead. He's been already shot. I cannot believe that you are telling Dan Moore that Isaac Funderburg saying that he saw him. No, he sees a little short, little dark complected, an exact replica. And I have all the videos where I have Isaac Funderburg up in there way earlier. All these cars up there way earlier. All these police vehicles just literally sharking around. Eldora Gatchel being literally Eldorsky. 7:17 and 52 seconds. Moore's truck, northbound on Denver, northbound 95, into far north parking lot, around logo shop, through drive-through, past window where shot was fired, around the other side, backs up, then out northbound on US 95. Well, let me ask you something. So your statement here is that you think that basically Dan Moore's vehicle at 7:17 and 52 seconds is the reason that Eldora Gatchel can't and doesn't go out that way. Because that's what you're basically saying. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
The result of that action of yours was that he died. And
Wait, so how come they don't talk about how Isaac Funderburg was driving back and forth through the coffee shop drive-through up and down like this? Well, before he ever said that he did. Like, you're not going to go at a 20-year-old? Or did you go at him and did you give him like, here, this is what you're going to say, motherfucker? That's what I'm curious of. Because that dude moved right after this murder.
Of the block, waiting for the clients to leave. They actually saw your truck when they were leaving in the alley. And then going back down there on foot and then shooting him and then coming back. Even if you didn't need to shoot him. If you don't explain to us your intent, then we infer your intent based on what we see, which is first degree murder.
I want to see Dan Moore
I
run.
didn't shoot him, and I'm sorry, but that's what it is. So I guess if you're going to do that, then I need to get an attorney.
Okay.
So what was the point of me bringing the gun down then? Just to have me come down there?
And you had to come back. We were in the middle of interviewing Mick again. Mick's house and his business and that's all being searched also. Do you have a cell phone on you?
No.
No. Is it in your car?
Yeah.
Okay. Sit tight. We'll be right back.
Boom, right there. See how he doesn't carry his cell phone on him? Yeah, so these assholes. There you go. All right, guys. We'll see you on the flip side.